Here's something most older guys refuse to admit. That mature, sophisticated charm you think you have? Yeah, she's not seeing it. What she is seeing are 7 specific behaviors that are making her cringe so hard, she's already texting her friends about it. And honestly, some of you are doing all 7 without even realizing it. Look, I'm going to be brutally honest with you right now. There's a Harvard study that found women under 30 rate older men as less attractive than men their own age in over 73% of cases. But here's the twist. It's not actually the age that's the problem. It's the specific habits that come with it. The difference between an older guy who's genuinely attractive and one who makes younger women want to fake a phone call from their sick roommate? These 7 behaviors, and if you're doing even 3 of them, you're basically handing her the exit door yourself. Stay with me, because number 4 is so common that you've probably done it in the last 24 hours without even thinking about it. Before we get started, can I just say something? This isn't about age shaming. Some of the most attractive, charismatic men I know are in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. But here's what they figured out that most older guys haven't. Younger women aren't turned off by your age. They're turned off by the outdated behaviors you're clinging to like a security blanket. Think about it this way. When a 25-year-old woman is interested in a 38-year-old guy, she's hoping for confidence, wisdom, and emotional maturity. What she's not hoping for is a walking nostalgia trip who treats her like she's from another planet. So this is your wake-up call. These 7 habits, they're sabotaging you harder than you realize. And the worst part is, most guys have no idea they're even doing them. But once you know what they are, you can course correct before you become another story she tells over brunch. Ready? Because some of this is going to sting a little. This one is absolutely deadly, and I see it happen constantly. You know what I'm talking about, when an older guy turns every conversation into a comparison between his generation and her generation. Back in my day, we actually talked to people face to face. Your generation doesn't know what real music sounds like. We didn't need apps to meet people. We had actual social skills. Here's what's happening in her head when you say these things. This guy thinks I'm inferior because of when I was born. Cool. Check, please. A University of Michigan study found that intergenerational relationships fail 64% more often when one partner frequently makes generation-based comparisons. And honestly, that number feels low. This behavior doesn't make you look wise or experienced. It makes you look insecure. Because what you're really saying is, I'm uncomfortable with the world changing, and I'm going to make that your problem. Here's the thing, though, and this is important. There's a massive difference between sharing a different perspective and lecturing someone about how their entire generation is broken. One makes you interesting, the other makes you exhausting. When you constantly point out generational differences, you're not bridging a gap, you're building a wall. And then you're standing on top of it, waving your arms, wondering why she's not climbing over to your side. The attractive older guy? He's curious about her world. He asks questions. He shares his experiences without the judgment. He treats cultural differences like an interesting conversation, not a moral failing on her part. So ask yourself this. In your last 3 conversations with a younger woman, how many times did you reference "back in my day" or "your generation"? If the answer is more than 0, we've found your first problem. This one is painful to watch, and it happens all the time. An older guy meets a younger woman, and suddenly he's doing everything in his power to prove he's still got it. He starts using slang that expired 3 years ago. That's so fire, bestie, no cap. He mentions every trendy thing he's vaguely aware of. Oh yeah, I love TikTok. I'm totally on Be Real. Have you heard of this new thing called Discord? He suddenly develops strong opinions about artists he'd never heard of until last week. Here's what's fascinating. A 2022 behavioral psychology study found that people can detect inauthentic behavior within the first 8 seconds of interaction. 8 seconds. She knows you don't actually care about whatever trend you're awkwardly referencing. And you know what's even worse? This behavior doesn't make you seem younger, it makes you seem desperate. There's nothing less attractive than watching someone perform a version of themselves they don't actually inhabit. Think about it like this. When you see someone your age trying way too hard to fit into a younger crowd, what do you think? Probably something like, why can't they just be themselves? Right. She's thinking the exact same thing about you. The irony here is absolutely delicious. You're trying to seem younger and cooler, but the trying itself is what ages you. Confidence is attractive at any age. Desperation never is. Here's what actually works. Being genuinely comfortable with who you are. Having your own interests, not apologizing for the things you're into, even if they're not trendy. Because authenticity is universally attractive, while cosplaying as a younger version of yourself is universally cringe. You don't need to know every new artist or app. You need to be secure enough in yourself that you don't pretend to. Oh boy, this one makes younger women want to teleport out of the conversation. You know what I'm talking about. The guy who brings up his salary within the first 10 minutes. Who makes sure you notice his watch. Who casually mentions his car, his house, his investment portfolio before he even asks about your interests. Yeah, I just got back from Bali. Business class, obviously. Have you traveled much? I'm thinking about getting a place in Miami for investment purposes. Here's the brutal truth. When you lead with money, you're telling her that you think that's all you have to offer. And even worse, you're telling her that you think that's all she cares about. According to research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, women under 35 ranked showing off wealth as one of the top 5 most unattractive behaviors in potential partners. Not bottom 5, top 5. This habit screams insecurity so loud that it drowns out everything else about you. Because confident, successful people don't need to announce their success every 5 minutes. Their security speaks for itself. Think about the wealthiest, most successful people you genuinely admire. Do they walk around announcing their net worth to everyone they meet? Probably not, because they don't need external validation. But here's where it gets interesting. Younger women aren't turned off by success or stability. Those things can absolutely be attractive. What turns them off is the desperate showcase, the peacocking, the using money as a personality replacement. There's a massive difference between, I work in finance and I'm passionate about it, and, did I mention I drive a BMW because I drive a BMW? It's a 7 Series. Do you know what that means? It means I have money. The first one is a conversation. The second one is a red flag parade. Want to know what actually impresses younger women? Generosity without announcement. Passion for your work without the price tag attached. Security that doesn't need constant validation. Those things? Actually attractive. This habit is absolutely everywhere, and most guys don't even realize they're doing it. But younger women notice it immediately, and it kills attraction faster than almost anything else. What am I talking about? The constant complaining, the cynicism, the everything was better before mentality. The inability to find joy or enthusiasm in anything current. Music today is garbage. Movies are all terrible. People don't have real conversations anymore. Technology is ruining everything. Young people don't want to work. The world is going downhill. Here's what happened. Somewhere along the way, some older guys decided that being negative equals being realistic, and being enthusiastic equals being naive. And that's absolutely destroying their attractiveness. A psychology study from UCLA found that prolonged exposure to negative people actually decreases the brain's production of feel-good chemicals. Literally. Being around chronically negative people makes us biologically less happy. So when you're constantly complaining, criticizing, and pointing out everything that's wrong with the world, you're not coming across as wise or experienced. You're coming across as exhausting. Think about the last time you spent extended time with someone who complained about everything. How did you feel afterward? Drained, right? Maybe a little depressed? Definitely not attracted to them. That's exactly how she feels when you turn every conversation into a criticism session. Here's the fascinating part, though. Younger women are often attracted to older guys specifically because they hope for a different perspective, someone who's lived enough life to have wisdom and perspective. But wisdom without hope is just cynicism, and cynicism is repulsive. The attractive older guy? He's seen enough to have perspective, but he hasn't let the world make him bitter. He can acknowledge challenges without spiraling into negativity. He finds things to be excited about. He's realistic without being pessimistic. Because here's the truth. Younger women are building their lives. They're full of possibility and potential. They're not looking for someone to convince them that everything ahead is disappointing. Ask yourself this. In your conversations, what's your ratio of complaints to enthusiasms? If you can't remember the last time you expressed genuine excitement about something, you've found habit number 4. This one is subtle but absolutely toxic. And it's rooted in something a lot of older guys don't even recognize in themselves. It's when you treat conversations like teaching opportunities instead of exchanges. When you can't resist correcting her. When you need to demonstrate your knowledge at every turn. When you subtly, or not so subtly, position yourself as the authority in every interaction. She mentions a book she liked. You haven't read it, but you immediately explain the genre and its limitations. She shares an opinion about something. You don't ask follow-up questions, you explain why a more nuanced view would be better. She tells a story. You interrupt with a actually or well technically correction. Here's what research from the Gottman Institute tells us. Contempt and perceived superiority are among the strongest predictors of relationship failure. And constantly positioning yourself as the expert? That's a form of contempt. What you think you're doing, sharing valuable knowledge and experience, what she's actually experiencing, being talked down to like she's a student instead of an equal. This habit comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what younger women want from older guys. Yes, they might appreciate wisdom and experience, but they want a partner, not a professor. They want someone who values their perspective, not someone who's constantly trying to upgrade it. The most damaging part? This behavior reveals that you don't actually respect her intelligence, because if you did, you'd be curious about her thoughts instead of rushing to correct them. Think about the people you most enjoy talking to. Are they the ones who make you feel stupid, or the ones who make you feel heard? Right. She's not any different. The attractive older guy knows that having experience doesn't mean having all the answers. He asks questions. He's genuinely curious. He knows that being younger doesn't mean being wrong, and being older doesn't make you the authority on everything. Here's your test. In your next conversation, count how many times you say actually or start a sentence with what you need to understand. If those numbers aren't 0, you've got work to do. This habit is so common and so devastating that I'm genuinely shocked how many older guys keep doing it. Bringing up your ex, constantly, comparing your date to previous relationships, sharing bitter stories about past heartbreak, making every conversation eventually circle back to this woman I used to date. My ex-wife used to do that exact thing. I learned from my last relationship that women always... After my divorce, I realized that... Look, here's some data that should wake you up. Research from the University of Kansas found that people who frequently discuss past relationships in new dating contexts are 83% less likely to form successful new connections. 83%. You know why? Because when you can't stop talking about your past, you're making it clear you're still living there. And nobody wants to date someone who's emotionally checked into a previous relationship. Here's what's happening in her mind when you bring up your ex for the 4th time. This guy isn't over it. I'm going to end up being collateral damage in whatever healing journey he's still on. Hard pass. And honestly, she's probably right. But it gets worse. When you compare her to your ex, even favorably, you're essentially saying, I'm constantly measuring you against someone else. How is that attractive? How does that make her feel special or valued? This behavior reveals something critical. You haven't processed your past. You haven't created the emotional space for something new. You're trying to move forward while dragging your history behind you like chains. The attractive older guy? He has a past, everyone does. But he's made peace with it. He can acknowledge it without dwelling in it. He treats his current connection as something new, not a second chance to relitigate old wounds. Your past relationship should inform your growth, not dominate your conversations. If you can't make it through 3 dates without extensively discussing your ex, you're not ready to be dating. Period. This last one is going to be controversial, but it needs to be said. And I'm not talking about natural aging, I'm talking about giving up. Here's what I mean. The older guy who's completely stopped caring about his appearance, his health, his fitness, his hygiene, his style. Who's surrendered to the idea that I'm older now, so it doesn't matter. The gut that's been expanding unchecked for 5 years. The grooming routine that stopped evolving in 2009. The wardrobe that's entirely comprised of comfortable clothes that don't actually fit anymore. The why bother attitude toward health and fitness. Now, before anyone gets defensive, I'm not saying you need to look 25. I'm not saying you need 6-pack abs or a fashion model wardrobe, but there's a massive difference between aging gracefully and aging carelessly. Here's some perspective. A study from the Psychology of Attraction found that self-care and personal maintenance ranked in the top 3 attraction factors across all age groups. Not youth, not even physical perfection. Self-care. Because self-care signals something important: self-respect. When you've given up on your appearance and health, you're broadcasting that you don't value yourself. And if you don't value yourself, why should she? Think about it this way. If she's in her 20s or 30s, she's probably paying attention to her health, her appearance, her fitness. Not out of vanity, out of self-respect. When you've completely checked out of that realm, you're creating an imbalance. You're asking her to be attracted to someone who's stopped trying. The attractive older guy takes care of himself. He doesn't try to look younger. He tries to be the healthiest, best-maintained version of his actual age. He grooms intentionally. He moves his body. He wears clothes that fit, not because he's vain, but because he respects himself. And here's what's fascinating. When you take care of yourself, you feel better. You have more energy. You're more confident. All of those things are exponentially more attractive than any specific physical feature. This isn't about competing with 25-year-old gym rats. It's about showing that you haven't surrendered, that you still value yourself enough to make an effort. So there you have it. 7 habits that are absolutely destroying your chances with younger women, and honestly, most of them have nothing to do with your age. They have everything to do with behaviors you can actually change. The generation lectures that position her as inferior. The desperate youth cosplay that screams insecurity. The financial peacocking that replaces personality with price tags. The negativity that drains the energy from every interaction. The authority complex that talks down instead of connecting. The ex-relationship obsession that proves you're not emotionally available. And the complete self-care surrender that signals you've given up. Here's the good news. Every single one of these is fixable. These aren't permanent features, they're choices you're making, probably without even realizing it. But here's what you need to understand right now, and this is critical. Even if you fix all 7 of these habits, there's another layer you need to master. Because sometimes the problem isn't what you're doing wrong. It's that she's already made her decision, and you're missing the signs. That's exactly why you need to watch the video that's popping up on your screen right now. 3 signs she no longer wants you in her life. Female psychology. Because I'm going to break down the 3 specific signals that women give when they've mentally checked out, signals that most guys completely miss until it's way too late. This isn't optional information. These are the warning signs that separate guys who can course correct from guys who get blindsided. Trust me, what I reveal in that video about female psychology is going to completely change how you read situations. Click it now, because understanding when you've lost her is just as important as knowing how to keep her interested in the first place.